righty. Well, we are with the folks that stuck around here at the end of our Proctored test this Sunday. We're going to be reviewing a couple of LR problems together. We're going to be doing a game together. I got several votes for these questions in particular, so I don't know if they were a little harder or if maybe they threw some people for a loop. If you're one of the people who sent me these questions in DM, please, when I go over what's right about a right answer or wrong about a wrong answer, you're raising that hand or you're speaking out to me. Making sure that I don't lose you in the wall of Zoom tiles. Just tell me who's talking to me if you just unmute on me. But let's dive in, shall we? I'm going to post this. These aren't drill links like you might be used to in most of our demon classes. These are actually links to the explanations pages for these questions. I didn't have the time to go look up a class where I could share one of these drill links with you guys easily. But we're going to start this with test 73, section 2, question number 17. We're going to look at this one together. You can open up that link I just posted in the chat and we'll walk through this one together. This one reads, if Suarez is not the most qualified of the candidates for sheriff, then Anderson is. Okay, so another way of thinking about that, if Suarez isn't the best, then Anderson's the best. Okay, so if Suarez isn't first, he's second, and Anderson is first. A couple different ways of thinking about that condition. Seems easy enough, right? Let's continue. Thus, our author continues, if the most qualified candidate is elected, okay, and Suarez is not elected, then Anderson will be. Okay, so the conclusion continues. Therefore, if the most qualified person gets elected and it's not Suarez, then it's Anderson. Meaning if it's not our first choice, it's our second choice. All right. Yeah, I'm tracking with this. This makes sense to me. We know that if Suarez isn't best, then Anderson's best. So Suarez is either best or second best. And if the most qualified person gets elected, so if the best person gets elected and it's not Suarez, then it's Anderson. So in this election we're about to have, we're either going to get our first choice or our second choice. Makes sense? Sounds like a pretty good election. Okay. What's this question going to ask us? Well, it asks the reasoning in which one of the following is most similar to the reasoning in the argument above. It's a parallel question. We're asked to find the thing that's going to match that logic, right? What are some forms that might take? Well, notice that when they're talking about most qualified, they're talking about a logical extremity, right? Like the most of something, the best of something. That was the recharacterization that I gave. We could invert that. You know, we could be looking for the worst of something or the least qualified. You know, those would be logically equivalent concepts just across a spectrum. You know, so let's take a look here. What would a parallel argument look like? Well, if the best, the worst, the most extreme of something, or if this person is not that, the best or the most extreme of a certain characteristic, then this other person is. And if we had some sort of competition and we didn't get our first pick, we got our second pick. Or if we didn't get our worst pick, we got our second worst pick, right? We would need to follow those lines of thinking for this to be a parallel argument. Should stick out to us like a sore thumb. I think we've kind of beat a dead horse on this one. So let's take a look at these answer choices. Answer choice A says, if the excavation contract does not go to the lowest bidder, okay, good so far, lowest bidder, the most extreme or something, then it will go to Caldwell. Okay, so if it doesn't go to the worst, then it goes to Caldwell. Interesting. So if Q gets the contract and Caldwell does not, then the contract will have been awarded to the lowest bidder. So if it goes to Q but not Caldwell, then the contract will have been awarded to the lowest bidder. Let me think about that for a second. Well, we don't know anything about Q's relationship to Caldwell, and I think that's kind of the problem here. We need to see the same Suarez to Anderson relationship teased out of this logic, and I don't think we've established that here in A. Let me go on to B here. B, if the lowest bidder on the sanitation contract is not Dylan, then it is Ramsey. Okay, so if the worst, the most extreme, isn't D, then it's R. That's following so far almost verbatim, just on the opposite end here of our logical extremity as our passage. Again, our passage says, if Suarez isn't the best, then Anderson is, right? That's basically what the first sentence of our passage reads. B says if D isn't the worst, then R is. Okay, let's continue. So if the contract goes to the lowest bidder, the worst, and it doesn't go to Dylan, our second worst choice, then it will go to Ramsey, our worst choice. Yeah, B is a spot-on parallel argument to our passage. That's looking pretty good right now. Again, going to go through C through E here and flex our answer elimination muscles. It's always critical on the LSAT that you be canceling out wrong answers. You're really not getting the click if you can't tell me why the 4 are wrong as well. I just got a DM saying, is there a list of questions we'll be going over somewhere? And also, is the logic game will we go over decided? Yeah, I posted links just a second ago in the chat. This is probably 4 or 5 minutes ago to the 2 questions that we will be doing, LR questions, and then the game that we will be covering. To the person who's just DMing me. Anyway, back to our answer choices here. Yeah, no problem. Not an interruption at all. Back to our answer choices here. C, if Capshaw is not awarded the landscaping contract, then Johnson will be. Okay, well, for that to be parallel, I would need to know that Capshaw is our second best or best choice, and Johnson is the only thing that could be better than Capshaw. So if the contract goes to the lowest bidder and it doesn't go to Johnson, then it will go to Capshaw. Well, no, that's getting that backwards. We would need to say if it doesn't go to Capshaw, then it will go to Johnson. So C is out. What about D here? If Holohan did not submit the lowest bid on the maintenance contract, you think about that for a second. If Holohan did not submit the lowest bid on the maintenance contract, then neither did Easton. I'm already hating this. It's giving us a neither nor scenario here. So if the contract goes to the lowest bidder and it does not go to Easton, then it will not go to Holohan either. No, this is super removed from our passage, not even close, eliminating D out of hand here. E, if Perez is not the lowest bidder on the catering contract, then Sullivan is. Okay, so if Perez isn't worst, then Sullivan's worst. Okay, so if Sullivan does not get the contract, let me see here. So if Sullivan does not get the contract and Perez does not get it either, then it will not be awarded to the lowest bidder. Again, way off the mark here. We're introducing all these different conditions in D and E here that just weren't present in our passage. B, again, spot on parallel argument here to our passage. Let's take a look at it one more time. If the lowest bidder on the sanitation contract is not Dylan, so if it's not Dylan, then it's Ramsey. So Dylan is either best or worst or second worst. So if the contract goes to the lowest bidder and it doesn't go to Dylan, then it will go to Ramsey, meaning Dylan is either worst or second worst to Ramsey, which is, again, spot on to our passage. To those of you guys who were sending me test 73, section 2, question 17, how do you guys feel about this one? Any questions for me here? Either in DM or otherwise. Sounds good, says Don. Okay. Anybody else? Might be too late to ask, but if there's time, then can we also cover section 112 on test 73? Yeah, time permitting, we can go back and take a look at a couple of other questions here for sure. Yeah, I have several lists from several people, so depending on who remains with us after we get through this next one, we can take another look at that. I also do have a pretty hard out here just a little bit after 7:30, so I'm going to try to get as much as I can in for you guys in that time allotment. Anything else here on question 17? Are you guys ready to do 73, section 4, question 10? And I'll add the link in the chat here for you guys to pull that sucker up too. You guys ready to move on to this one? That's a thumbs up. All right, let's do it. Okay. Test 73, section 4, question number 10. It reads, apparently we are hearing from a vacuum cleaner salesperson. Always the most trustworthy people I know. I don't know about you guys. Let's see. It says, to prove that this Super XL vacuum cleaner is better than your old vacuum cleaner, I ran your old vacuum once over this dirty carpet. Okay, so in order to prove that the thing they're trying to sell me is better than what I have, they ran what I have over my dirty carpet. Okay, then I ran the Super XL over the same area. Okay, well, after my old vacuum cleaned it once, you're going to try to tell me you're selling me something better when you went over the same spot? That seems curious. Anyway, just reading and reacting here, right? Not doing anything more. All that dirt, the author continues, all that dirt that the Super XL picked up is dirt your old vacuum left behind, proving the Super XL is the better vacuum. Well, no, I mean, not necessarily. It's not an apples to apples comparison, right? I think that's my first issue here is like, you know, if I was trying to sell you a broom and it was better than your broom and I used your broom to sweep the floor and then I used the second broom to sweep the exact same spot on the floor and then I was like, hey, this broom's better. You would look at me and you'd go, dude, how is it better? you didn't sweep the same spot separately. You know, we're not comparing two things equally here. The old vacuum went first and left some dirt. The new vacuum went second and got that dirt. Well, what if the first vacuum loosened it up? Or what if the second vacuum couldn't have gotten some of that dirt? We would never know because we didn't run an equal experiment. I should say that's my big reaction here. Yeah, that was my prediction, says Don. Yeah, it just doesn't seem like an apples to apples comparison is the way that I would articulate that. And again, I don't know if you would hear us call that like a flaw here at LSAT Demon, the apples to oranges comparison. I don't think that's a real thing necessarily. And Don says, but I still chose wrong. Okay, well, let's go find it then, Don. I think that's a great prediction, you know, that this wasn't an apples to apples comparison. Again, I'm expecting some sort of either maybe like a necessary assumption or a flaw question here. This seems like a pretty flawed argument to me. But let's dive in and see what it's going to ask us. It says, the vacuum cleaner salesperson's argument is most vulnerable to the criticism that it ... Yeah, it's a flaw question, right? That's what we've identified here. And I think we're going in armed with a pretty good prediction. Don's prediction here, I think, is a great one. They're not comparing two things equally. They're running an experiment, then they're running a separate experiment that has some overlap, and then they're trying to sell that the results of the second experiment are better or can be compared to the results of the first experiment. That just doesn't seem like an appropriate experiment to me. So again, on a flaw, if you need to get a little more mechanical with it, if you didn't intuitively make that prediction or have that reaction, you need to find an answer choice that does two things on a flaw. The first of those things is it must be something that the argument actually did. That in many cases, 4 or 5 of these answer choices will actually reflect something that the argument actually did. But here's the kicker. You got to find the second thing, which is it has to be a problem in how the author tried to prove their conclusion. It has to be a problem in their reasoning, right? So let me be clear. On a flaw question, you can get an answer choice that says something the argument did and that under other circumstances might have been problematic. But if it's not problematic to how this author in this instance proceeded with their reasoning, that's not your answer choice. You need to find the answer choice that is something the author did, and it needs to be something that the author did wrong, okay? So again, here I would want an answer choice. I mean, I think it would be a slam dunk, but if we found an answer choice that said something along the lines of compared to phenomena or experiments as if they were equal, or yeah, overlooks the possibility that the experiments were not conducted equally or properly. Something like that would feel pretty good. Let's dive into answer choice A here. A says that it ignores the possibility that dirt remained in the carpet even after the Super XL had been used in the test. Well, okay, here's a perfect example of what I was just describing. Yes, I would say that our argument does ignore this possibility that dirt remained in the floor. But I ask you, is that a problem with our author trying to prove that the Super XL is better? No, it's not necessarily, right? Like, I'm sure there's some dirt left in that floor. It could be the world's best vacuum, but that doesn't change the fact that that doesn't affect how our author proceeded with their argument. So A is out. What about B? Takes for granted that the Super XL will still perform better than the old vacuum cleaner when it is the same age as the old vacuum cleaner. I don't even know that our author takes this for granted. Maybe the author is reasonably certain that the Super XL will have a 20-year warranty, 20-year lifespan. I don't know, but I don't think that if that characteristic is what our author did use as their selling point, they would have made a much better argument at the outset, right? This has nothing to do with how our author tried to make their conclusion, is the point I'm making. So we can confidently eliminate B here. I'm not even sure our author did this, but even if they did, it wouldn't be problematic to their conclusion. All right, C. Takes for granted that because the Super XL outperforms one vacuum cleaner, it is the best vacuum cleaner available. Well, no, this isn't what our author did either. I think we could make the argument that our author does take this for granted, but we aren't trying to convince the vacuum cleaner salesperson isn't trying to convince their customer that this is the best vacuum cleaner of all time. They're trying to compare it to the old vacuum cleaner specifically. So we can get rid of that. I see Justin says, Nate explained this question that if you chose answer D, the seller would still be able to say, yeah, but my point is that your vacuum left it behind, not that it removes more dirt. Interesting. I haven't gotten to D yet, but I'll be curious to see if I have the same reaction that Nate did. Yeah, C is confidently out here. Again, D says that it ignores the possibility that the amount of dirt removed in the test by the old vacuum cleaner is greater than the amount of dirt removed by the Super XL. Yeah, I think I'm having a similar reaction to Nate here. I don't think that's a particularly valid criticism. Like, okay, the amount of dirt removed by the old vacuum is more than what was removed by the Super XL. Great, that might just be the big pile of loose dirt. The Super XL might still be getting like the pesky, difficult dirt, making it the superior vacuum. Like that's still possible under these auspices. So no, I hate D as well. And it better be E here because I've hated everything so far. E, that it ignores the possibility that if the Super XL had been used first, would have left behind just as much dirt as did the old vacuum cleaner. Yeah, actually, exactly. This is a roundabout way of saying it, but this is basically saying all things weren't equal, that this wasn't an equal experiment, is basically what he is saying here. This suggests that if it ignores the possibility that the Super XL had been used first, it would have left behind just as much dirt. That's the piece that's identifying that this was an unequal experiment, that these weren't run under the same conditions. Because if it had left as much dirt, and that was what our author was trying to use to make their point, then the Super XL might not be as great as we think it is. So yeah, definitely going to be E here. Feeling very good about E. Anybody have any questions on 73 for question 10 here? You guys feeling good about that one? Seeing some nods. Okay. All right. Sweet. Feels good now, says Don. Okay. Yeah, Don, is that clicking for you? I see. I chose D. Okay. So let's talk about D for a second. You say it feels good now. Do you feel crystal clear on why D is out? I'm getting those weird, weird like thumbs up emojis. Go ahead, Don.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
So the reason why I chose D was I was thinking about how equating the old vacuum cleaner to get more dirt than the new one. So I was kind of putting that was in my head the whole time, that if it just picked up more dirt, it would have been better. But being wrong for that reason that Justin put in, and the reason that you hated it too, I think I get it.
Yeah, so yeah. I like what Justin pointed out here about what Nate said. Yeah, but my point is your vacuum left behind dirt, not that it removes more dirt. Again, going back to our author's reasoning, the selling point that the author is trying to use here is all that dirt that the Super L picked up is the dirt your vacuum left behind. It's trying to say, like, it could have been a tiny amount of dirt. It's still got the dirt that your vacuum missed. That's essentially what our author is trying to do to sell the vacuum. So we're really trying to poke holes in that reasoning, which E just cash money hits right on the head. Well, we didn't run both vacuums on a similarly large pile of dirt with a similar characteristic of dirt. You know, Super XL might just be really good at catching a specific kind of dust bunny, you know, so we can kick it out under those auspices. Thanks for bringing that part of Nate's explanation into the conversation, Justin. I appreciate it. Okay, well, we've got más o menos about a half hour of review time that I have left for you guys. I'm going to go ahead and transition to this logic game that I was getting some requests about. Real quick, I'm going to ask for everybody to hit me one more time because I think I saw more requests for the second game come in after I'd already picked this one. Do you guys want to do the second logic game from test 73 or the fourth logic game? Just hit me with a 2 or a 4 in the chat there. I was getting lots of requests for game 2 after I had kind of shut the poll down. Tied up. Okay, there's 2 people for game 4. Fourth. Yeah, okay. I'm going to go ahead and stick with game 4 then. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. This is a tough game, in my opinion. This is one of the harder logic games that exists out there. So I wasn't surprised to see that folks wanted to do this one. I'll go ahead and add the, yeah, okay, 4 says Tiffany. Right on. Hopefully we keep you here for the review, Tiffany, in case there's anything here that you guys missed. In fact, I wouldn't be super surprised if a lot of folks that are newer to the test didn't even make it to this game. If I recall correctly, this is a pretty feisty game section, test 4's or test 73's games. I want to see me do my magic on game 4. Right on, Don. Well, hopefully I can do that magic. Let's dive in, shall we? This is test 73 game 4. I just shot that explanation link to you guys off in the chat. It reads, a florist is filling a customer's order for 3 bouquets. Bouquet 1, bouquet 2, and bouquet 3. Okay, we're making some flower arrangements. Sounds good. My wife will love that. Each of the bouquets is to be composed of one or more of 5 kinds of flowers. Okay, very powerful phraseology in that clause. Each of the bouquets is to be composed of one or more, meaning it's got to have one at least, but it could have more. Okay, of 5 kinds of flowers: lilies, peonies, roses, snapdragons, and tulips. L, P, R, S, and T. Subject to the following conditions. Okay, rule number 1 says bouquets 1 and 3 cannot have any kind of flower in common. Okay, so if bouquet 1 has it, bouquet 3 cannot. If bouquet 3 has it, bouquet 1 cannot. That seems pretty easy to follow, right? 1 and 3 can have no overlap. Okay, makes sense. Carrying on, rule 2, bouquets 2 and 3 must have exactly 2 kinds of flowers in common. Okay, so notice right there, the groups themselves are what is mostly implicated here in these rules. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, Brandon, I tried to make worlds based on tulips, that might be a tough nut for you to crack on this game a little bit, because the groups really are where our constraints are focused. We're playing with the groups themselves more than we are the pieces. That's very interesting. Yeah, bouquets 2 and 3 have to have exactly two matches, is the way that I'm thinking about that. So for example, if group 3 has lilies and roses in it, and that's all that group 3 has in it, then group 2 has at least lilies and roses in it, right? They've got to have matches. So constraining the numbers in group 3 will actually be advantageous for activating this rule. Okay, let's carry on. Rule 3, bouquet 3 must have snapdragons. That's easy enough, right? Now we know what one of the elements in group 3 is, and we know what one of the elements in group 1 is not, right? There's never going to be a snapdragon in the first group. There's always going to be one in the third group. Okay. Rule 4, if a bouquet has lilies, that bouquet must also have roses. Okay, but cannot have snapdragons. So it's a compound necessary condition. When a bouquet has lilies, it also has roses. So if L, then L and R, right? That's how that plays out. But also not L and S. And I'm not going to write that down. I'm just going to kind of keep this in my mind. If you have lilies, you definitely also have roses, but you don't have snapdragons. And notice what that just taught us in conjunction with the third rule. We're not going to have lilies in the third group, it turns out. That doesn't mean we can't have roses, but since we have snapdragons in group 3, we can't have lilies. Interesting. About rule number 5 here. If a bouquet has tulips, that bouquet must also have peonies. Okay, so similar to rule 4, it's not a compound necessary condition there, but if you have T, you also have P. So if T, then TP, right? This is the way to think about that. Okay. Yeah, this is a tough game, y'all. I've taught this one before. It's been a while. This is on a lot of people's lists of like toughest logic games, and I think it just comes down to the flexibility. But I think it also comes down to the fact that Worlds, which is a really, now, we're making it a much more pervasive thing in LSAT land for how to attack logic games here at the Demon. I think this is one of those games that has kind of a different angle for making worlds than most students are used to. I think most students are used to making splits based on game pieces. I think this one actually kind of pushes you to make it on the groups themselves. So here's what I mean by that. L, P, R, S, and T, those are our pieces, right? L, P, R, S, and T. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rules. I'll explain why I'm enumerating those here as I go. Yeah, so we've got 3 groups, right? We've got bouquet 1, bouquet 2, and bouquet 3. And I'm just going to make like a little grid here to doodle that stuff out. What can we write in first? We can eliminate rule number 3 pretty easily, right? We know that the third bouquet has snapdragons, which means it's also never going to have lilies, right? We also know that the first group and the third group, I'm just going to kind of write that this way. We know these two have nothing in common. So if this has snapdragons, 1 is never going to have snapdragons, right? Is that making sense to everybody so far? Yeah, following my baby steps here? Yeah. But now I'm kind of left with like, well, what do I do next? Everything is so flexible. Where should I attack? Well, where I'm looking is for the element that is the most constrained of the elements we've been discussing. And to me, that looks like group number 3. Group number 3 is implicated in 3 different rules, and the implications are affecting who can even be in the third group, right? So I'm just going to kind of think about this in like, who's left? If we have an S being used, and we know we can't have an L, then I think, and I'm going to write this in the margins, we could potentially have all 4 other pieces. We could have some combination of 3 pieces. I think here. Actually, we can't have SRT because we'd need a peony in there. What about 2 pieces? Could it be SP, SR? Can't be ST because we need peonies. Yeah, I think so far these are the only candidates for who could potentially be the 3rd group. Let me think about this. Could it be all 4 of them? Well, if it was SP, R, and T in the 3rd group, then I'm going to run out of possibilities for the 1st group. So follow me here as I kind of doodle this in. If this was SPRT, the only piece available now for group 1 to use would be L. And we know, based on the 4th rule, that if we have an L, we definitely also have an R. But that would produce an overlap between groups 1 and 3, right? So I don't think we can ever have SPRT be group number 3, right? I'm just going through possibilities here before I make a bunch of splits. And if you're asking yourself, like, how would I be doing this on my paper? I'd mostly be doing it in my head. I'd have my master diagram here and I'd kind of just be thinking about, like, okay, if I had a PRT here, what effect does that have on the game? What about SPR? Well, if this is SPR, then you can't have lilies up here because that would bring in roses. And you can't have tulips up here. So again, just for the sake of argument, if that was SPR, then the limited options in group 1 become L, which brings an R, which causes a problem, or a T, which brings a P, which causes a problem. So I don't think it can be SPR either. That one's out. Let me think about this. Can it be SPT? If it was SPT, then I think we're safe, actually. Because if it's SPT, we could have roses or lilies and roses in the 1st group. And we wouldn't have any overlap. So I'm thinking SPT is safe. What about SP? Could we do SP here? Well, if this was just S and P, we would know what our matches were. That helps in one area. What does that limit my options to for group number 1? L, R, and T, which would bring in a P, so that'd be a problem, but you could still do LR. Yeah, so I think SP is good. What about S and R? Can that be group 3? If it's S and R, again, we would know what our matches are in group 2, so that looks pretty good. I couldn't have lilies up in group 1, but I think I could have peonies or tulips. So yeah, I think SR is going to be perfectly satisfactory as well. And now notice, thinking about the compositions, the potential compositions of group 3 are how I'm going to make my splits. So I now know, I think we could do SPT, SP, or SR as group 3, right? So I'm just going to make these splits. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to say this world is SPT, this world is SP, and this world is SR. Okay, just give myself a little visual separation here. Kind of mark this out in the margins, getting a little messy on us. Okay, so some things that stand out to me right now. I could eliminate the, what is that, the 2nd rule by writing in what my matches would be. And I think I'd only have to make one split to do it. Right here. My matches in this world, again, could they be S and T? Well, no, because that would bring a P in and I would end up with 3 matches. So I think they could be S and P, or they could be P and T. But I think that's it. I can only have exactly 2 matches between bouquets 2 and 3. But here, I already know what they are. That's easy. Same thing here. Here, I just need to make one more split, I think, to capture it. So we have SPT in group 3. My matches in group 2 can either be S and P, or P and T, right? And now notice, what did I just kind of force to happen? Well, here, I can't have a T now. And here, I can't have an S now. And the reason I'm actually keeping track of these no laws, so to speak, is I think it's going to help me figure out who could possibly still be in these groups, right? So, for example, that gets rid of the second rule. And we're still maintaining our first rule. We haven't broken that yet. So let's take a look here. Who could be my first bouquet? What could be my first bouquet here? Well, it could be lilies and roses, or it could just be roses. I can't use any of SP or T here. So I know that's got to be at least R and maybe also L. Right? You guys seeing that so far? How about over here? I think it's a very similar story. Again, it can't be S, it can't be T, it can't be P. So it could be either roses or roses and lilies. Going after rule number 1 now. What about here? Well, it can't be S and it can't be P. What else could it be? Could it be, well, and that means it can't be T either, because it can't have a P. So similarly to these, it's going to be at least roses and maybe also lilies. Is everybody seeing how I'm coming to those conclusions? I'm just working my way backwards from all those necessary conditions, all these preventions. Yeah, what about down here? Well, it can't be S and it can't be R. I think it could be, and because it can't be R, it also can't be L. But similar to these three worlds, I think it could be peonies or both tulips and peonies. You guys see, I'm just accounting for the fact that it's got to have at least one, and then I'm bringing in the other possibility with that shorthand, right? And now I think I've solved for the first rule, because those are all the possibilities of group 3. Those were all the compositions of group 3. And I've built out my group 1s based on what my group 3s were, what I forced my group 3s to be, right? So what do I have left to deal with? Well, I have the 4th and 5th rule. So I just have to play with, like, what are the possible remaining scenarios for group 2? So let's take a look here. We've said here, group 2 definitely can't have a T, but is there any reason why it couldn't have an R or an L? Well, that S means I can't have an L, but I think I could still have an R there. I don't see any reason why that group couldn't still have an R. You guys see what I'm saying? There's nothing constraining that at all. What about over here? Well, I know I can't have an S. I've deliberately prevented that. But I don't see any reason why I couldn't have an L, an R, or both. Really, right here. That would cause no additional overlap, and it's not constrained. So this group could actually be R or LR or neither. It could be just PT, but it could also be PTR or PTLR. It's not constrained. What about here? Can it be an L? No, because it's got an S. So it can't be an L, it can't be an S, and it can't be a P. Could it be a T, though? Or what about an R? I don't see any reason why we couldn't have an R, and I don't see any reason why we couldn't have a T, because we already have a P. So this could be R or RT or T. You guys seeing that? This group could be just SPT, it could be SPR, it could be SPRT. We just can't bring in that lily in that group. What about right here? Well, again, we know it can't be S or R, which means we can't have an L. But could we have a P and bring in a T? Or a T and bring in a P? I don't see why not. I think we could have a T, a P, or a TP. Or excuse me, not T without P. It could either be P or TP or neither of them. Does that shorthand make sense to y'all? How I'm writing that in? These things in parentheses are just possibilities, remaining possibilities. And with that, my friends, we've baked them all in. We've baked in all the rules, right? We can't break them anymore. We started by playing with our potential configurations of the third group, the most constrained group. We asked ourselves, well, since the third group can't match the first group, when we've played with each of its possible configurations, what does that mean for the first group? We played that out. And now we ask ourselves, well, what could then be the resulting second group? We have to make sure we cover our bases on the remaining flexibility with group 2. But we have done exactly that. And with that, my friends, 4 splits. My cap's going back on the pen. I'm going to go get, what is this, 6 free points at the end of this section. Feeling very good about that. What about you guys? Is this making sense, how I chose to attack this? And how it's a little unconventional. It's a little bit different than the way we do some splitting here at the Demon. Any questions before we attack the questions? Yeah, Don, please. What you got for me?
So is it fair to say that when you're doing this game, you attack the minimum requirement first and then working out the maximums? Like you did it first by distribution and then you did the bare minimum for each group and then seeing what else.
Sort of. Oh. What I really attacked on here, Don, wasn't necessarily mins and maxes. I had it in the back of my mind that, like, okay, every group's got to have at least one thing in it. Like that's baseline. I knew that going in. But then once I baked in that third rule, there was just so much road in front of me, if you will. There was no clear attack vector. So I just sort of doubled back and said, who's my problem child in this game? Like, who is forcing a lot of other stuff to happen? And in many other games, it's going to be like a game piece, like an L, P, R, S, or T. Well, in this game, it's actually just the third group. The composition of the third group sets off all these chain reactions, right? The composition of the third group limits your possibilities of your group 2 pairings, and it dictates to you who your group 1 group can even be. So when I noticed that, I went, okay, what are all of my possible ways of filling up the third group? That's going to be my attack vector, because if I play with that idea to its logical conclusion, I'm going to see how that affects groups 2 and 1. And it just unraveled all the complexity. But again, going after a group, that's pretty unusual. That's not a common place to make worlds, frankly, at least in my experience. So if that wasn't evident to you guys, I hope this is a good example of where you can be looking for those opportunities in the future. Does that answer your question, Don? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Bradley.
Yeah, you bet, man. Absolutely. I appreciate you asking. All right, let's get into these questions, shall we? Question 19. Which one of the following could be a complete and accurate list of the kinds of flowers in each of the bouquets? Okay, so it's a list question, a full solution question, we sometimes call it. Always on logic games, y'all, be eliminating these, the wrong answers here with the rules for 2 reasons. One, gives you a chance to reread the rules and make sure you have a crystal clear understanding of them. And you want to find that out now rather than in question 23, let me tell you. The other benefit here is it lets you double check your worlds. Once you've eliminated down to the right answer, you can find it in your worlds as a way to kind of pat yourself on the back and double check your work. That's, again, good to find out now rather than on question 22 that you might have overlooked the world. Okay, well, let's take a look here. First rule. Bouquets 1 and 3 can have no overlap, nothing in common. In our first answer choice, A, it looks like they don't violate that rule. In our second answer choice, would you look at that? We have B, it breaks that rule. We've got peonies in both bouquets 1 and 3. In C, I see no overlap, good there. In D, there's also no overlap, good there. And there's no overlap in E. So only B broke the first rule. Rule number 2, bouquets 2 and 3 have to have exactly 2 kinds of flowers in common. Okay, A, we've got peonies, roses, and tulips. And in 3, we have P, S, and T. So P and T is our overlap there, looking good, A. What about C? we've got roses and snapdragons, and in bouquet 2, we have roses and snapdragons, so C is good. D, we've got peonies and snapdragons. That's also true of 3 in answer choice D, so good there. And then in E, okay, they both have lilies and roses, so nobody breaks rule 2. All right, rule 3, bouquet 3 must have snapdragons. A looks good, C looks good, D looks good. E is out, only lilies and roses. So we're down to A, C, and D here. Rule number 4, if you have lilies, you must have roses, but not snapdragons. Okay, in A, I see bouquet 1 has lilies and roses, but no snapdragons. That's good. In C, I don't see any lilies in the mix. And in D, I see, bouquet 3 has lilies with no roses and snapdragons. So D is like super wrong based on rule number 4. Okay, rule number 5, if you have tulips, then you must also have peonies. So if T, also P. In A, I see tulips only in both 2 and 3, and they both have peonies. And in C, I see, in bouquet 2, tulips, but no peonies. So C is out. And that leaves us with answer choice A. Again, we would need to find an LR, PRT, PST world. Let's see here. So PST would be these two up here, PST. So we're in one of these two worlds. We have an L and R in both, and then our bouquet 2 needs to be PRT. Well, it's not here, but look at this, PR with no L and T. Does everybody see how this world contains answer choice A? Is that clear to everybody? All right, moving on. Question 20. If lilies are in bouquet 1, stop. Where is that even possible? Possible here, possible here, possible here, not possible here. So for this question, I'm only looking at these 3 worlds. These are the only ones I even need to pay attention to. If lilies are in bouquet 1, which of the following must be true? Must it be true that lilies are A in bouquet 2? No, you could have SP, SPR. You don't need lilies at all. A is out. What about B? Peonies are in bouquet 3. Peonies, peonies, peonies. That looks pretty good. Looks like it's going to be B here. What about C? Roses in bouquet 2? No, you could have SP with no R. You could have PT with no R. You don't need roses. Get out of here, C. What about D? Tulips are in bouquet 2. Again, you could have SP with R or no R, but certainly don't need tulips in bouquet 2. What about E? Tulips in bouquet 3? Yes and yes, so close, but you don't need them here. That third world coming into play eliminates E from contention. If lilies are in bouquet 1, then B, peonies must be in bouquet 3. Everybody seeing that? Making sense? All right, kick ass. Let's keep going. A couple more here. Question 21. If tulips are in bouquet 1, stop. Where are tulips in bouquet 1? No, no, no. So these 3 worlds are out. Only this world, it looks like, is in contention for this question. So if tulips are in bouquet 1, which here would be T and P, which one of the following could be a complete and accurate list of the kinds of flowers in bouquet 2? Okay, so we're looking at bouquet 2 here and saying what could be a complete and accurate list of those flowers. So 4 of these answer choices are going to be a mischaracterization of this group's possible composition, and one of them is going to nail it on the head. It will match one of those possibilities. So can it ever be A, P, and T? Well, no, here it can't be P and T. It's going to at least be S and R. So A is out. Is it going to be B, P, and S? Again, wrong for essentially the same reason. You got to have at least an S and R in here. What about C, P, S, and T? Again, you're missing my R. So get out of here, C. What about D, P, R, and T? Can it ever be P, R, T? No, you're missing my S. So D is out. What about E, P, R, S, T? Well, you got my S and my R, and it looks like you also brought in my potential P and T. So yes, E is going to be correct. We could have S, R, T, P be the composition of group 2. Is everybody seeing how I'm coming to that conclusion? Is that making sense? All right. Question 22. Which one of the following cannot be a complete and accurate list of the kinds of flowers in bouquet 2? Okay, so one of these is going to be impossible in all of my worlds. It won't be something that can be in group 2. The other 4 will be possible in at least one of my worlds, right? So can we ever have a group 2 composition that is just A, lilies and roses? No, 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 no. Looks like that's going to be the answer. Apparently, no, we can never have a group 2 composition of just lilies and roses. Again, let's eliminate the other 4 here just to make sure we're flexing those muscles. Is there a world where it's just P and T? Yeah, right here. You could have just P and T be the composition of group 2. You could also have an R or an L and an R in this world, but just a P and a T is a perfectly acceptable composition of group 2 in that world. What about PRS? Well, yeah, right here. You could have P with an optional R and an S. So C is out. What about D? Can you have PRT? Yeah, right here. Again, P, bring in our optional R and our T, no problem. D is out. What about E? PRS and T? Let's take a look here. What can't be the composition? Can we ever have a PRS and T? Well, I think we're looking right here. P, RT, and S could all be group 2 right here. I don't see any problem with that at all. So E is out. Everybody with me on question 22? All right, kick ass. Last but not least, which one of the following cannot be true? So which of these 5 things isn't possible anywhere on the map? A, can lilies and roses be the only kinds of flowers in bouquet 1? Yeah, there are lots of ways to do that. Where L and R are the only flowers in bouquet 1. A is out. What about B? Peonies and tulips are the only kinds of flowers in bouquet 1. Well, yeah, our 4th split down here, there's one way to do that where P and T are the only kinds in the first bouquet. So B is out. What about C? Lilies, peonies, and roses are the only kinds of flowers in bouquet 2. So is there ever a world where we have just L, P, and R as our group 2? No. L, P, and T, so no. No, it turns out, it looks like C is going to be the answer. There's never a bouquet 2 composition that is just L's, P's, and R's. Let's, again, eliminate D and E to be super certain. D, can we ever have P, R, and S be the only kinds of flowers in bouquet 2? Yeah, right there. P, R, S, no problem. Here, also, you could have P, R, and S, no problem. So D is out. What about E? Can we ever have peonies, snapdragons, and tulips, PST, be the only kind of flowers in bouquet 3? Yeah, all day long. PST is kind of our base split right there. So E is out, leaving us with C. The power of worlds, unconventional starting point may you have, takes the worst games and just bends them over with no problem. Bends them over barrel. And with that, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. I'm going to have just a few more minutes here to wrap up last questions. Does anybody have anything else for me here, either related to today's test or just LSAT in general? Feel free to fire away. Otherwise, I wish you well. I'm going to kill the recording. We'll do a couple minutes of Q&A before I have to dip out. So any last questions here, y'all? All righty. Well, I'm going to kill the recording here and let you guys open Q&A. And from there, I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Thanks, and congrats on finishing your test today.